fellow viewers, I'm Anwar Kadir, your host, and the program is Anadufu. Anadufu, as I always say, doesn't mean simply welcome. It means a warm welcome with wide arms. And my guest today is Dr. Jemal Mohammed, an instructor at AAU University. And he is going to tell us much about himself from childhood to the way he is now living in Finfinne City at AAU University, and tells us more about leadership, because he studied that as his PhD. And where did he study his PhD will be answered also on this program. Stay tuned, don't go away, please. Okay, Doug, let's start from your birthplace. I mostly, of course, always ask my guests to tell us their birthplaces. And where is your birthplace?
Thank you very much for inviting me on Anadufu. I was born in Balezo of Oromia Regional State, Sinana District.
What can you tell us about your childhood and the schools you studied at?
Well, as every Ethiopian family, average Ethiopian family, especially in the rural families, rural areas living families. My family are, my father and mother had many children, and I'm one among those children. And I grew up in among many siblings, both brothers and sisters. And from my early childhood, my father was focusing on education, and he sent me to schools in the local area, and I was pursuing my study from that time. We have to state the names of those schools you passed through, because that would be exemplary for students coming from those schools. Yeah, my elementary school, the name of the school is Shallo Elementary School. I was actually born and grown up in a village called Shallo. So it happened that I went to a school in that area. The name is, as I explained, Shallo Elementary School. Then as soon as I finished my elementary school, I went to the nearby town, which is Robe town. And from grade 7 to grade 12, I studied I pursued my study in Robe Secondary Senior High School. And then I joined Jemal University for my first degree in business management. And for my master's degree, I pursued study in Addis Ababa University. And finally, I did my PhD in Malaysia. The name of the university is National University of Malaysia. They call it UKM in Malay language, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And that's UKM, translated as National University of Malaysia.
Malaysia is a country of many ethnic groups.
Malaysia is really a very interesting country, that it is a country of diversity, where multiple ethnic groups, like the Malay, the Aborigines, which account for around 60% of the population, reside in, and Chinese also are there, which account for 20% of the Malaysian population. And there are Indians also, and they account for 10% of the population. And there are other actually Malaysian, ethnic groups. And by the way, Malaysia, the name of the country was not Malaysia in the previously. The previous name was Malaya. There was a civil war that broke after the decolonization of the country, after the British colonialists left the country. A civil war broke out, and finally they end up in reconciling among themselves. And one of the demands of those other ethnic groups was changing the name of the country. So the name Malaya was changed into Malay-Asia and Malaysia. It became Malaysia. And there are many ethnic groups from Asia. As I told you, there are Indians, Chinese, and other ethnic groups from Asian countries, and that's why the name Malaya is changed into Malaysia.
You studied your PhD on leadership. I think your dissertation is on leadership.
My PhD was generally it's in management, but specifically my thesis was on leadership area, and I did. Thesis was very serious, and it takes more than 2 years study for writing the thesis. Actually, after finishing the coursework, so my area is, I can say, is a leadership area.
Well, we'll be back. We'll be back to that topic. We'll be back to that topic. Do you have kids?
Yes, I'm a father of 4, 2 boys and 2 girls.
And their names?
The name, the first one is actually he has many names. The formal name is Abdurrauf Jemal. He's also named Falmata Jemal. And the second one is Iman Jemal. She's a girl, and she's now grade 5. Abdurrauf is grade 7. And the third one is Salahuddin Jemal. He's pursuing his KG now. And the fourth and the last one is Sundus Jemal.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Your job experience. About your job experience, where did you work? After you studied your first degree and second degree, and then that way.
Immediately after my graduation from Jemal University, I joined Unity College. At that time, it was college. Now, actually, it's university. I joined Unity University, and I have been teaching in Unity for more than 4 years, 4.5 years. Then I did my master's in Addis Ababa University, and after finishing my master's degree, I joined Ethiopian Civil Service College. Now, actually, it's also university. And I have worked for around 2.5 years or 3 years, approximately. I worked in Civil Service University as a lecturer. Then I went for my PhD to Malaysia. And after that, I came back and again rejoined Ethiopian Civil Service University, the Institute of Leadership and Governance. And then I joined Addis Ababa University, and currently I'm working as an assistant professor in Addis Ababa University, Department of Management.
Let's now be back to leadership that you told me. What was the topic of your dissertation?
The title was on transformational leadership and change management. And because I chose this topic for practical reason, that I see many changes failing, and research also indicate that 70% of the change programs fail most of the time, and especially when it comes to Africa, the need for leadership, and specifically transformational leadership, is very important.
How can you correct the leadership situation in Africa, specifically in Ethiopia? We can talk about Ethiopia too.
Well, actually, PhD is more of philosophy than study about the practice on the ground. But as a person who focused on this area, from my observation as well as my several studies, I can talk about African leadership in that African, both in public and private organizations, I can talk, are more managed than led. To me, there is a difference between leadership and management. Management is more about going with the status quo. Management is more about exercising your formal authority. And management is more about controlling and bureaucracy. And when it comes to leadership, opposite to that, it's more about empowering others, being a visionary, and risk-taking and changing. It's about change. The major essence of leadership is actually change. So when we come to the African context, the practice that we see is more of management than leadership. Especially, you know, when you are at the top level of the organization, you are expected to be more showing a leadership behavior than a managerial behavior. But what we see is that the African leaders are most of the time, they are micromanaging the organizations. They are not visionary and change-oriented kind of leadership that they are exercising. And of course, they lack vision. And with that, they can't rally a large number of people behind their vision because they don't have a very, a moving vision that they're showing. Instead of that, most of the time, what we see, especially when we see the public organizations or the public sector, the leaders want to stay and cling to power as much as possible with whatever mechanism available, including many unethical practice and political playing and politics, you know, blaming others, not taking responsibility for the failures that you are supposed to be accounted for, and not having clear vision, not empowering others, trying to act like a totalitarian or authoritarian kind of person, and controlling everything.
How can this then be corrected for Africa to build a great country in Africa? And if you come to Ethiopia, the great Ethiopia, how can you create that? How can you correct this?
Yeah, actually the question is very broad, and there is no such hard and fast thing that I can suggest. But some of the problems that we can see, and the solutions that I suggest is that, number one, proper leaders should come to the position. The leaders that are taking the position of leading others, especially in the public sector, I'm focusing on the public sector, shouldn't come based on kinship or based on, you know, other kinds of network. Instead, they have to be people who are proper for the position that they are leading. That's the first thing. Next, once they come to the position, the leaders should know themselves. Who are they? What are their qualities? What are their capabilities? What are their competencies? And then, knowing their followers and the organization they are leading, what is expected of them? What's at stake? What is expected of them, from them, by the public, is very important. They have to understand that. You know, what we call in leadership, and actually not only leadership, in many social sciences, is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is very important when it comes to the quality of leaders.